Oh,
Let's bring this meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. on October 8th, 2024. Good evening, all. Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call attendance, please?
Yes, sir. Chair Patrick Molina,
Here.
Vice Chair Martha Barrera,
here.
Member Aaron Hamilton,
Here.
Member Heather Anderson,
Here.
and Dottie McKinney, Secretary, here.
We have ourselves a quorum. Good evening, everybody. And to those in the attendee gallery, welcome. And staff in attendance on the screen right now include Ms. Karen Warner and Jake Colander. Other staff include Principal Anthony Branch, Katia Pride, who's one of our directors, Katie Rarick, our finance guru, and director Lisa Hughes, and one public, Miss Jennifer Hathaway. Hello, Jen. All right. And let us kick this off with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Item number 2, public comment. We have one public.
Oh.
If anybody in the attendee gallery wishes to make a public comment regarding anything on the agenda, this is your opportunity to do so.
And I just opened the chat, so you could either add a message in the chat or raise your digital hand, please, if you want to make public comment. I'm not seeing anything.
I'm not either. Very good. Then we will close the public comment section and move on to item number 3, which is the approval of the current agenda. I move to approve this evening's agenda as posted. If I could have a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms.
Sorry.
Dottie, or Ms. Martha. Excellent. So hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to look at the agenda. I would like to add one item at the very end of section 8, and it would be item D, and that is the lease agreement that Mr. Dustin Sparks, our legal counsel, would like to present to the board. So we will put that right after the explore email accounts for board members.
So
that's the only change I am proposing at the moment.
and that's moving from 6A,
Moving
that
6A, yeah.
down to
Like 8D-ish.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's the only change, just to give Dustin a little bit of time to get his business squared away on that end. So that's the only change to the agenda. It's just moving that. It's not really a massive change.
And then B3 will be held in the closed
Correct.
session, right?
Yep. Section 7 or 6B3 would be issues with a bus driver on a route, and we will do that in a closed session. So I'll move to do that closer to time. Any other comments or suggestions with regards to the agenda? All right, very good. Well then, Ms. Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve this evening's agenda with that one agenda item being moved further down the agenda timeline?
Yes, sir. Chair Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Member Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
and Member Heather Anderson,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney, aye.
All right, our agenda is ready to go. Item number 4, I move to approve the meeting minutes from September 10th, 2024. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thanks, Dottie. All right. Just going through that gave me a little flashback to that rather long evening, but everything looked in order. It was really nicely done. I didn't see anything. Thank you. Heather actually had a change to the agenda earlier in the week. We embarrassingly omitted her name, so we fixed that. But the minutes are pretty tight, I believe, unless anybody saw anything that needs to be changed.
Thank
That-
you.
That's,
I apologize, Heather.
oh, no, that's just fine. I just to catch up with everything. So I thought I'd bring it to your attention.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. But I didn't see anything in the minutes. I think we even got Martha's name spelled correctly this time around.
But in all instances,
In all instances. I've added it to my when I was a secretary, I added it to my library, her and John's last name to make sure I didn't goof it up. Well, very good. Then if there's no further discussion with regards to the minutes, then Ms. Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve the meeting minutes from September 10th, 2024?
Yes, Chair Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Member Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
and Member Heather Anderson,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney. Aye.
All right, our meeting minutes are approved. We can take draft off of those. And already into item number 5, let us promote Miss Katie Rarick into the panelists forum. Hey, KR.
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Good. All right, we will get going. Share my screen, which is what I always forget to do. There we go. All right, so the first first thing to present is the check register. We spent almost $500,000 in accounts payable payments. The $300,000 that we paid ACH has to do with ERB. A lot of your like payroll fees are sitting in here. ERB, of course, is the pension, and then the payroll that we actually ran. So all in all, we had about almost 1.7 leave the bank in the month of September. And then when we look at the bank reconciliation, we ended the month at a little over $1 million. But we did have $240,000 outstanding, or $240,000 worth of checks outstanding. And so when we look at
Katie,
Mhm.
can you make it a little bit bigger? I don't know if I'm the only one with old eyes, but thank you.
Nope, you're right. I should have done that. Sorry. And so when we look, these are the list of outstanding checks, something that we're adding. Most of them are from this fiscal year. If we get too far into the year and these like to December, if the city of Albuquerque is having big cash, we're just going to void them to avoid any audit findings for that. And then here's all the receipts. Here are the revenues that came in. We should be seeing a large HB30 through SB9 probably in December or January. Those are from the local they're not income tax.
Property.
There we go. Local property taxes. And our two largest revenue allocations are the SEG and our transportation money. So we got a total about 1.7 in. And then the big topic tonight, it's important to check the check register and the bank rec, is our forecast. So the forecast, we did have a large decrease to our state funding, or our projected state funding. We're still getting funded. That number you saw before was still the number based on what we had told them, which was closer to 1550. But it looks like we're going to hit closer to 1410. Last time when we talked, we thought we'd be closer to 1450. So that $500,000 is an adjustment due to the decreased projected enrollment. as of when we met, or when Jake and I spoke a few weeks ago. So given that we are showing a deficit, now this, again, this $600,000 is the coverage that we have to keep for our bond, but so it's not really cash that goes out the door, but this is scenario showing that we're not going to meet that, that we won't meet the coverage ratio. And even, so if we take that out, that will help a little bit. But we would still have a negative net operating. We would have probably closer to $500,000 as a fund balance. But overall, we need to balance the budget. Our salaries are too high for our enrollment. And the salaries did increase since last time, but that was more shifts that are being made. But now we need to find savings across the board, but payroll is the place where we probably are going to find the majority of our savings. Here's our cash flow. Our cash flow has us, go away browser. Our cash flow has us ending negative in this scenario. Again, because I have that 600,000 here just as a placeholder. And then also the other thing baked in here is your outstanding checks I have sitting in here too as an adjustment. So both of those things are causing our cash flow to be negative at the end of June. Also, we do pay the double salaries in June, just as a reminder. And that's why we see some of our expenses go up that month. So what our cash flow looks like, it's not super pretty. And so our next steps are that we need to identify savings. I mean, if we had any next steps out of this meeting, it would be to identify savings.
Right. And I think Mr. Colander is already doing those calculations.
Yes. Yeah. No, we've talked about it, and we know the number of staff we need to be looking at. So
I do have a question on the check register. You don't need to flash it.
Yeah.
Who or what is Happy Pierce?
She's a service provider at the school. She works at the K-5 and at the 612. I'm trying to remember what specific area.
Isn't it special ed?
It's a service provider for special ed. So I think it's like, not occupational therapy, and it's not speech therapy, but it's within that sphere.
Okay, perfect.
It's
I
an
was just curious.
name.
It was an interesting name, and I didn't know if that was the name of a business or of a person. So I just curious. I really do read these things, people.
And I'm sorry, this is Karen. Just wanted to know that while you were chatting, I looked it up, and she is a speech language pathologist, independent contractor.
Yep, very good. Very good. Perfect. All right.
And then we have one bar tonight. This is a very small bar, but everyone gets a preschool allocation. It doesn't quite make sense because y'all don't have preschool, but everyone gets it, even people who are just high school. And so we spend it just like we do Idea B on special programs.
Right.
Any questions on any of the financial stuff?
Sorry, if it's okay, I'm going to ask one question on the forecast page, the current versus previous forecast. So in terms of what we're needing to make sure that we square budget-wise this evening, is that blue column operating income at the 715? Is that the 715,902? Is that the number that we're aiming at?
Yeah, that's ideally the number we're aiming at. Yeah.
Okay.
Because if we don't aim at that, so this is our estimated fund balance. I won't know it till the audit's totally done, but it's going to be very close to 600,000. A school our size should have at least 600,000 as a fund balance, if not more, because we need this money as we roll into next fiscal year and we wait on RFRs. And so if we want to continue to build our financial sustainability, we do need to have like a reserve. So yeah, so 715 is the ideal number.
Good. Okay, well then let's open it up for discussion by making a motion to approve our check register, bank reconciliation, and budget forecast for the month ending September 30th, 2024, and bar ending in 0009I. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, so my only comment with regards to this is next year, let us not budget 1550. Let's budget 14 and a quarter, please. I think that's probably a more sustainable long-term number. And if we overshoot that, woohoo! But this is the third year that I've been involved that we always had these very ambitious goals. And now we're having very painful conversations in the first semester with faculty and staff on we overshot. So that's my only comment going forward is next year, I'm going to really scrutinize the number that's brought to the board with regards to what we anticipate our enrollment to be, because I'd like to not repeat this again.
Yeah,
Ta-da.
and that comment is very timely because we have to submit next year's numbers next Tuesday on the 15th.
Cool.
So and Jake's talking to Josh and I about that. And so
Okay.
and you can revise them when you get into budgeting, but by statute, they have to have an idea of what you're thinking about by October 15th. So anyway, I agree. And I prefer, it's always easier to get more money from PED than
You bet, all day long. Right. So the number that hit me was 14 and a quarter. If there's a better number out there, go for it. But Patrick speaking, anything above 1450 will get severe pushback from me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and the other thing everyone should know is that if you say you're going to get like 1410 and you end up getting 1510,
right,
you can go to PED after the 40th day and you can request what's called a 13th SEG. I've had to do that for schools who just like blew enrollment out of the water.
right.
And they will send it to you that month. So you'll get it in November. Yeah, you're not going to start getting it in July. But
Right.
But there is an easy way to fix that problem fairly early in the school year if you have to. So just know that there is a way to get money before February if we end up over enrolling.
That I prefer that problem to the one that we have right now. That's just me. Board members, feel free to chime in with your thoughts, but that's where my brain went. Any other thoughts, questions from the board? Ms. Karen, I see your hand.
Not a board member, but I just wanted
Yeah.
to share that this is a tightrope. I just want to remind you that this is a tightrope you need to walk. And perhaps also, regardless of the number projected, we don't want to start the year without enough teachers either. It's kind of that fine line we have to walk.
It
So,
is.
remembering that if we don't have enough staff, this is more for any staff who might be listening, that class sizes could get too big before we can hire additional staff. And then
Agreed.
spread it out. And so there's like a lot of, I just want to be clear that it's not as clear as setting a
Sure.
number, right? You have to be able to support the staff until you can get that payment in November. So,
Agreed.
and
Agreed.
if you don't hire all the staff initially and add as you get enrollment, there is a flux period there where class sizes could be larger than we'd like while we adjust. So just
Right.
wanted to share that as an added point.
And Jake and I had a conversation that about the facilities, and that of a number that starts in 14 is probably a much more sustainable overall number. So, and we can always turn off enrollment too, right? We can stop taking students, or do we have to take students if they come in the door?
If you set a cap, like if you say we're only going to have 2 classes or 3 classes of each grade level and you hit that cap, you can create wait lists in those grade
Okay.
levels.
Yep. So you can set caps based on, obviously has to be below your approved enrollment cap and also within the limits of the facility, but you have to set those before you do your lottery. So you'd say, we're going to have X openings in this grade, and after you reach that, fill that many openings in that grade, you can stop it. We've had to do that this year, particularly with the elementary grades, for example.
Mhm.
They have wait lists where our high school grades still have some empty seats, if you will. So,
Right.
but yes, you can set a cap based on um your facility space and your enrollment cap. But you also need to remember what you need to meet your rent payments and the financing payments as well. So
Oh, no, totally. And I know we shot high this year because we were anticipating the gym being open and having more to offer, and that didn't come through. Hopefully next year we have a different conversation, but I'm thrice bitten and quite shy. So I'd like to, on the next budget, be a little bit more conservative and then see where we balance out. Because I believe both campuses are maxed out on room. It's not like we can build any more classrooms or any of that. So I'm hoping over the next year or so we find that true sweet number that we can hit year over year, and the budget adjustments aren't to the tune of almost $750,000. That would be a really nice conversation to avoid. But that, again, just me.
And I will add, I talked to Katie maybe it was a week ago or something, but I asked her when kind of payroll and these rounds of meetings kind of died down, just to look at what that sweet spot would be, minimum number to pay rent and to cover what are the recurring fees. And there's some things, I mean, the problem is everything's in flux, because right when we talk about paying rent, I believe next November is when we go out to look at refinancing the lease agreement, which could change what that rent payment is at that point. I don't know what the delay factor is between renegotiating and when we start paying the renegotiated amount, but in terms of facilities, and Mr. Branch is here and might be able to speak to it more than I can if you wanted to bring him in. But I think when last I heard from him, with the teachers that we've had that have with the one teacher that resigned at the end of the quarter, I think we are finally in a space where every teacher can have a classroom, and that will only change when the black box theater is available. That teacher who's utilizing the classroom will move into the black box theater when the gym is open. Right now, they're asking for 3 classrooms. They have 2. 2 should be sufficient once the gym is open. But essentially, we're looking at potentially just 1 classroom available at this point, and with the existing numbers that we're at, which we could talk numbers in a bit, but Miss Pride also just had texted me that said that the new projection is 1419. We're sitting at 1414 in Power School right now, and we have 5 more. It looks like that will be in there for tomorrow and ready to go. So, I mean, that number about what you're saying about 1420, 1425 hits us in terms of where our facilities go. If we were to add an additional 100 students, we would have teachers that are kind of on a permanent rotating basis, which none of us are comfortable with on our end, putting a teacher in that circumstance.
Yeah. Agreed. So I think we're starting to dial into that solid number that we can hang a hat on, budget to it, and forge on. So, because I cannot imagine the conversations you're having to have with faculty and staff who are excited to be part of Explore Academy, and now we don't have the enrollment to support it. So, and it's a fine line, but I think we can walk that one with some confidence going forward. Very good. Mr. Branch, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. So yes, what Mr. Colander said is correct. Term 3 is the first term that I didn't have multiple teachers having to rotate rooms, and that makes it very difficult on teachers, right? Because
Sure.
having to move their stuff every period, especially science teachers, having to try to do labs and things like that makes it disheartening for those teachers. And I mean, they were very happy to do it, but I like the situation that we're in now, where I don't have anybody roaming. Everybody has their permanent classroom. Then that also helps with us in setting up our flex classes, because I have to take into account those classes, and we try not to utilize teachers' classrooms in consecutive terms. So that allows them to have their room to be able to eat lunch and basically work on their lesson plans and things that they need to do for our students to be successful at the school. So I agree with you, sir, and that if we can keep it at a reasonable number and not having to cut teachers would be fantastic for me. So just looking at those things and hopefully we can bring on, you know, maybe one more teacher once we get the black box. And I think that we'll be comfortable with everybody having their room. Plus, you have teachers that are a lot more happy and willing to stay when
Yeah,
they have their own classroom and they don't have to rotate because it is a huge burden on them on a day-to-day basis,
absolutely.
and
You
especially as
bet.
students. So
You bet.
thank you.
And I understand the need to retain students, but we also have to focus on retaining talented faculty, right? I mean, that's a very important element. And I think having your own dedicated room that you can make your own, it's your culture in that classroom is an important element, especially with the flavors and the dynamic learning environment that we promise our families and students. When their classrooms are transient, then you've lost some of the flavor from the flavor, right?
Yes, sir, I
So,
agree.
yeah, so I'd like to dial that number in. The other issue is that the state hasn't kept up with the cost of living. So year over year, we haven't seen the per student reimbursement go up in relationship to all of the other inflationary burdens that are placed on all of the schools. So that is another issue, is we're trying to serve our community at the same customer service level that we promise, but the state isn't giving us the commensurate monies to do that. So we're doing more with less. And hopefully that'll get changed. But until that happens, we've got to get creative on how we handle business. But so there you
And
go.
it
That's a lot
just,
from Patrick.
and I'm gonna go back to, I'm gonna look at what Jake asked about, like the sweet spot. It is my guess, given how the school is kind of organized, is that it has more to do with the student to teacher ratio than it does an overall number. You guys actually are you guys do lunch very well. You guys do use your supplies and curriculum very well. That's where we see a lot of expenses. Yes, your rent is high, but it is what it is given your buildings. But you really have to have each classroom full to the max if you're going, like, when it comes to your budget, because your class sizes are already small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yep. Yeah. No, that doesn't concern me at all, right? 18 to 1, I get it. But if we know, again, if our number is right there and we're recruiting, and so right now, here we are in October, we need to be marketing for the next school year right now. Actually, probably a month or two ago. And I love the saying, when was the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago? When's the next best time is right now. So the marketing starts right now. It has to start right now. Public presence, getting into the community and getting folks excited about Explore, so that we have the opposite problem, right? We've got folks on wait lists who are chomping at the bit, as opposed to us having these painful conversations. So I hope I haven't beat a dead horse, but until the state helps us catch up on reimbursements, because everything has gone up. Everything. Look at this register. I bet if we take this register and compare it to about 3 years ago, we would see that the numbers don't jive, yet the reimbursements have been relatively flat. So there's several pressures on the budget. But I think if we dial in our number, that takes off that piece, right? And it's easy enough to do all the fixed costs, and that's, you got to have these many students to cover your fixed costs. But we're not running a fixed cost business. We're running a dynamic business here to deliver to the community an education platform that is like none other, which is our attraction and our claim to fame. So I am looking I'm looking very forward, rather, to hearing from Director Pride on what the marketing looks like starting now and how that looks throughout the next several months. So I'm very excited about that.
And I'll
I've done
just
a lot
add
of
something.
talking. Yes, sir.
Sorry. Sorry, I
No,
was
no,
just
go
going
for
to
it.
add to that. Yeah, in terms of the class sizes, like that is one of, I think, a key challenge of the model is that it's built on the idea of choice. And so, some will prefer some things over others. And it will by nature end up with kids who 25 wanted one flavor, can't put 25 in there. So 7 of them are going to go somewhere else. And then those 7 we risk losing because the parents are saying, well, they had a choice and they didn't get the choice they wanted. They took something that you assigned them to. We can certainly talk about, I think we can sort of philosophically dig into that because there are later meeting is what I mean. Because Justin and I have actually been having a lot of conversations around the vein of how do we maintain the integrity of a choice-based model where we know there are going to be inequitable outcomes to classroom distribution, but still giving kids and families the experience that they're looking for when they sign up for a school that advertises that as its gist and its mission.
Yep. Yeah, talk about a fine line. That is a fine line right there. So, and if this were easy, everybody would be doing it. So I think we have the right folks on board with the creative talent and the creative tension to make this happen. But I'd like to avoid this conversation next year if at all possible. I've done a great deal of talking. I'd like to open it up for the rest of the board for any questions, comments, and other thoughts. Yes, ma'am. Please.
This is for Jake. So Jake, since you and Justin are talking a little bit more about, the concerns that, we've had for a few years now and about the flavors, do we have maybe some staff or committee that we can also include in the conversations to see what would work? Maybe, I don't know if you're department heads or.
Sure. I think, just as an example, for instance, if right now the school policy stands that students who sign up for dual credit courses have one course that can contribute to their total credits at our school. And so additional dual credit classes they take don't count towards our school credits. And we also only pay for books for the first course they sign up to. But if we can actually foster that system a little bit better, it may be one of those pull factors that's getting kids drawn to other schools where there are more dual credit opportunities. And they find that, one thing at our school that has both been a benefit and worked against us is the kids being able to sort of build up a credit base where maybe middle of their junior year to start of their senior year, they're pretty much done with what the state's requiring. So then how do we keep them? Like, how do we keep those kids active and in school and engaging in that pathway? So if we had, as an example, if our senior class, which is, let's just say it's at 55 kids, if we had 10 of those kids, 12 of those kids doing more dual credit classes, it's fewer kids in classroom spaces. So that 18-to-1 ratio is easier to achieve because they're not occupying seats in desks, but they are still on our roll. We're still giving them some kind of credit within our system. They are out at CNM and taking advantage of opportunities that some other schools look at. My daughter went to college career high school at the CNM campus and was able to chalk up a whole lot of dual credit there. And so those are the kinds of conversations we're having is opportunities. Sort of we've taken a good look at what we do in the doors, and I think we're starting to get a much deeper dive into what we do outside the walls of the school facility to look for opportunities for kids to both drive their interest level, to continue for them to be able to earn credits within our given system, but also to a degree gets them out of sitting in a classroom and into experiencing things around them. So one of those is actually on my school leader report this evening is internship opportunities we're looking at. When we get there, I'll share some of that. I'm sure that once we get to a point where we have some ideas that are a little bit more hammered out, because right now we're sort of like on a phone call or on a quick Google Meet, spitfiring things back and forth. And I think the more we get that hammered out, we'll be more formal in terms of its presentation to you as the board, but also then to parents to talk through what some of those options look like.
All right. Thank you, Miss Martha. Anyone else? Very good. Well then, Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve the check register, bank reconciliation, and budget forecast, along with bar number 00 ending in 0009 I for month ending September 30th, 2024.
Yes, sir. Chair Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Member Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
Member Heather Anderson
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney, aye.
Thank you all very much. We move on to item E under section 5 of our agenda, and that is the plan for potential rifts. And I believe, Mr. Colander, you are up.
Oh, he's on mute. Jake, you're on
There we
mute.
go.
He is on. There
Sorry,
you
I
go.
kept clicking and it wouldn't unmute. So kudos to the computer for knowing what it's dealing with. I don't know, Karen, if you don't mind sharing screens, or I can pull it, or I think I can share screens, right?
You
Mhm.
can, but I'm happy to do so if you prefer. Never
Okay,
mind.
no, I'm okay to do it. I just want to make sure I good. Okay. So I added some information this evening. Like I said, I got a text from Ms. Pride about the numbers, but we tried to sort of walk backwards through our plan, both in terms of what we have done and shifts that we started making from the beginning. Last school year, we were actually in a position where as teachers, if they resigned or wanted to move somewhere else, we just were not replacing them. And we had enough attrition that way over the year that I don't actually think we ended up riffing teachers last year, because we were able to avoid it through just not replacing some of the attrition. So this year, unfortunately, because the projected numbers were so much bigger than the previous year, it's been hard to abide by that. And comboed with, and it's a good thing, even though it sounds like I'm saying it's not, we have a much better retention of our staff. We don't have staff that are leaving like the little group that did last year. So we are at 14 right now in Power School. When I checked before I got here, Katia saying 1419 is what she anticipates will be reported to the PED tomorrow. So I kind of, the first question was major cause or causes requiring a RIF. I think it's that. It's sort of the other attributing factors that I didn't put in here are some of those other things, like the increased expenses that we've taken on by paying staff a little bit higher. I think that includes teaching and non-teaching staff. We've had teaching staff that are coming in with more experience rather than less. And we've had a couple of long-term subs, which means we have EAs that are being paid out as level 1 teachers. But it leaves us with a shallow pool of EAs to provide all the other services. So we're, to a degree, having to backfill some of those positions. In the long run, it should save us a little bit, but it's like squeaks and bubbles compared to, a teacher who's out. In addition, our non-teaching staff, we tried to sort of get them on par with what we felt was meaningful salary. I told Justin I do my best to try to invest in people rather than things. And sometimes that means we give people a bump where we feel like it's appropriate, even if it's not on that like 3% trajectory, which I think the state thing, we were looking at a 3% increase for teaching staff. And then there were a few non-teaching staff that we bumped a little bit higher than that because the year prior, their salaries were, in my opinion, a little bit lower. So overall, those are, I think, some of the contributing factors to it. So these are adjustments that we have made to try to avoid rifts as much as possible. So starting with the resignation of the assistant principal at the K-5 position, the dean of students won't be starting until the 1st of November. So we've almost stretched that hiring process out for a full semester. And the dean of students position is also a lower paying position. The assistant principal was originally scheduled to be paid for this year. So that will save us a little bit. That's not a complete replacement of a person in terms of the savings, but it's a little bit. At the mid-high school, much to, unfortunately, to Principal Branch's chagrin, it was one principal, one head administrator, and 2 assistant principals. And this year we have reduced it to 1 principal, 1 head administrator, and 1 assistant principal. So we cut an entire position there from the mid-hire, or at least chose not to replace that position once it was vacated by Principal Branch. In terms of pay, I think, putting it in there, but there was no increase in pay for the head administrator at ABQ. What my ABQ salary is this year is the same as it was last year. And so that we had looked at what it would be to jump that pay to give a raise in that direction. We chose not to go that route. And so that saved a little bit of money. We have had the following resignations come in this year so far. We have a director of instruction from the ELS team who actually just resigned last day, the 21st. We will not be replacing that position by hiring someone to fill it. Our middle school music teacher who resigned at the end of term 1, we were not replacing. We're balancing that course load with a math teacher who's also a music teacher. We have a middle school science teacher who resigned right at the end of this last quarter. So Friday was her last day. And we're not replacing that position. We had at the K-5 2 special education teachers plus somebody who was contracted just to write the IEPs for students. And so I spoke with Director Nee about that, or Director of Special Education, and we decided to go ahead and not continue the contracted position, but instead just maintain the 2 special education teachers, but not the contracted IEP writer. So that position was cut. That was not, and of those, these were things where we were able to shift students around so that we don't have to keep cutting positions within staff. School reduced its budgeting in supplies, maintenance, and facilities, such as under the following section, we've hired a facilities and grounds person, which hiring an additional person, but at an overall savings to what we were spending on our contracts for facilities and maintenance. Similarly, with our HVAC worker, Sean Crawford, hiring him was hiring a new person, but reducing our overall cost from what we were contracting with Travers from last year. We redesigned the school lunch program at both sites, so now that Genuine Foods is there and they have people contributing to food, how food is handed out. What I've heard is that it has an overall reduction on the utilization of EAs for food services, so that we're able to flex a little bit around there. We didn't use a lot. We have 1 at the K-5 and 2 at the 6-12 that really devoted to that, but having some ability to flex there since we do have Genuine Foods employees who are at the schools. Working on shared EA support, so something that Dr. Valdez at the K-5 principal branch and myself have been trying to do is when we have needs, in the past, we would look at the 6-12 almost like an isolated space where if we felt like there was insufficient coverage for teachers, we would look at hiring an additional EA. And this year, we're trying to look holistically at K-12. So we're shifting. So next end of this week, I think we have some teachers who are, we have a day where there are more staff out at the K-5. So as opposed to us looking at that and seeing it as a hiring issue, it's more of a shifting of responsibilities to have some EAs from the 6-12 go over to the K-5 to help support coverage. And we also shifted to hiring our custodians as our employees as opposed to contracting with a custodial company. The other thing that we've done is, I think, and Katie, you can correct me if I am wrong on this, but I think on the budget, it includes the expenses we paid for the roof on Masthead. And there's a loan that's coming later that should put that back into the budget. Is that correct?
Yeah, so both are in there. So the revenue and the expense are both in the forecast.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's a wash, but okay. Okay, perfect. All right. We did absorb within that loan, we absorbed some expenses that could be lumped in there. But it looks like that's already built into that. So I think if I remember from our last meeting, we had talked about the potential for 6 to 7 cuts to staff. And it had to be, I think the request was that it was staff, that it wasn't like your level 1, 0 years of experience staff, just in terms of dollar amount, that we had to hit a certain dollar amount. So what we are foreseeing is the reduction of 1 EA that has moved to a position for, we had an EA that moved to an Ed Fellows position that we replaced that one, but chose not to replace a different EA to move to a long-term subbing role. We're looking at reducing 6 teachers at the classroom level. So kind of spreading that amongst the campuses. Our numbers at the elementary school, I'm not sure support us being able to remove a classroom teacher at the elementary. I think those numbers, I think I saw that they were at 413 or so. I don't know that we have much wiggle room in that, but I have asked Alicia Boatman, who's our scheduler, to have her team take a look at the K-5 to see if there's any chance to shift students around to potentially cut there. Otherwise, it's coming from the 6-12 campus, unfortunately. And that's a reduction of 6 teachers on top of what was already listed above in the section of attempts we have made to avoid the rifts, that some of these positions we did not hire back for, or teachers that resigned that we're not replacing. In addition to those, we need to look at cutting 6 additional staff. Other options, like we've really been trying to figure out options for this, potentially reassigning some job duties to help cover some sections. So our counselor, we have a student body population of, over 1,000 at the 6-12, and it was just about 1,000 at the 6-12. And with that many kids, with not making light of it at all, with the number of just mental health concerns and issues that are facing public schools right now, we felt hiring a 3rd counselor was a good move to be able to serve those students. But that is an English teacher who stepped out of the middle school classroom, so potentially having him pick up a section of class to teach, similarly with the math interventionist who taught a section of math this last quarter for middle school, because we added a math interventionist, again, needing someone who is a content expert. All of our instructional coaches and leads are coming from a humanities background, so having somebody that was focused on math intervention, tutoring support, which is one of our #1 most cited concerns last year from parents, is there was insufficient math support for kids. So we felt that that was a needed position, but if needed, we could have her again picking up a section of math or so that we could kind of level it out that way. I had a hard time with the designation of non-essential services because by nature, I'm a teacher and kids need everything. So it was hard to say, so what's not essential for kids? The one that I felt, and this was a tough one because again, this was like both a pull and a push factor, that we have kids who leave our school to be able to play more competitive athletics. And when they see friends of theirs that attend district schools where they have matching uniforms and they're not old ones that got pulled out of a closet and that we need coaches for because it's hard to find coaches, we felt that it was a small investment to make to be able to provide uniforms and to pay coaches. And we let our athletic director this year, who was hired in, by the way, as our athletic director and our gym master. I don't know if you all recall back in April when the incident with the gym occurred, there was talk about potentially still being able to have the gym accessible in the fall. That is clearly not going to happen. They have yet to start construction on it, and we're October 8th. So it will not be available in the fall, but because we were having a gym coming, we made a hiring decision to have someone who would lead on partially on the ELS side of providing director of athletic services as well as a gym master to help run and coordinate gym services there. So we are trying, she's currently teaching classes in addition to her role as athletics director, but she felt that in order to make sure that our athletics program is not a reason kids leave, that we invest a little bit into it. But I'm trying to think of other like non-essential services or activities. And it's very hard for me to think of any that I would put under that category unless it's some kind of terminology that has a specific designation to it as a non-essential service, for which there is like a pre-populated list of things that qualify as that I could look at. Other than that, we don't hold a lot of extracurricular activities that cost the school money. Most of it is either volunteer or paid for through PTO. And I don't know that we have any non-essential services that we provide to our kids, because that's something that we cut pretty tightly. Unfortunately, it looks like it literally comes down, as Katie was suggesting, the big chunk of this comes down to payroll. That's of the other things that we spend money on, there just isn't much wiggle room in those places to still provide adequate services to students. So at this point, that's where we're at. And I have already spoken with both principals about the possibility for this, so that they could start working with, so Anthony could work with his assistant principal, and Dr. Valdez, Principal Valdez, could work with her instructional coach, who kind of functions until that dean comes on as her right hand, starting to look at teachers. We do have a process for it, as is outlined below, that we would utilize to make those decisions for staff that meet that criteria. But at this point, that's the option that seems like it's most not only effective in terms of meeting the need, but doable.
Right.
Chair Molina, may I just share a couple of comments about SEG funding for those who are new to that?
Please.
And so I just want to be clear, like, your SEG funding, right, is your per pupil funding. And it's what drives the entire operational budget for a school. And I also want folks to know, I know many of you know this already, but there are some, particularly I know Member Anderson is new to the board. I'm not sure if she has school finance background. So, and for anyone else who might be listening, or staff or families that want to know. And like I don't know if Katie knows better than I do, but a good majority of SEG goes to salaries and benefits. And that's why there's very little else to cut. And I mention this because people hear about things like we get federal grants, we get IDA money. That can only be used for very specific special ed purchases, which we're doing. Or we get Title I or Title III, but they all have very specific requirements, and we can't use that money to cover this, right? And for example, there are other things. The kitchen infrastructure grant, which was a huge amount of money, thanks to Katrina Lovelady applying for that kitchen grant, covers building a kitchen and getting some vehicles to transport food. We can't use any of that money for anything else. So I just wanted to say that out loud because I've been hearing a lot of rumbling about how can you buy a van and cut a teacher. I just want to be clear that it's, as you saw from Jake's plan, very much a lot of thought goes into how we can limit and cut non-personnel as much as possible, but there is very little wiggle room because those other funding sources have very specific purposes and cannot be used. You can't just mix it all in the bunch and use it. So I think it's important as people see a new van come to the school that they understand that's not replacing a salary of anyone, as an example. Educator fellows, those folks that money is specifically for them. If we don't use it for that, it goes back to the state. It's not something we can access. So I just think it's important for not only board members, but again, Jake and Mr. Colander, Mr. Branch, I would, want to actually discuss some of that school finance 101 with their staff as well, because there have already been some rumors and misinformation that I think just comes with educating people about how it works. And none of us want to cut positions, but unfortunately, there isn't anything really else to cut at this point.
Yeah, Sandy, we used to call it color of money, right? The money was different colors, and you can't spend orange money on a green project. So, and a lot of folks don't realize that. They see a brand new van and wonder, hey, why did we get that? So I think that is a good idea. The other item that I'd like to point out is Mr. Colander was very careful to make sure that the cuts weren't limited to just faculty and staff or faculty. It includes director level and above, right? So cuts are being made throughout the organization and not just on the faculty side, which is also a perception. Is they're losing all these teachers, but everybody in the front office is still there. No, that is not the case, and that needs to be communicated carefully and completely as well. Is everybody is pitching in to this situation. So
And this plan was shared because by statute, when they're going to have any kind of significant budget changes and potentially particularly a reduction in force, there needs to be this discussion and approval from the board to proceed with the plan. So I think at this time, I would ask that the board acknowledge and approve Jake to move forward with, figuring out what exactly through his rating sheets and all that, what needs to happen, but that we are, approved by the board to proceed.
well, then I move to approve the plan for the potential risks as presented by Mr. Colander. A second.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion, folks?
The only thing I'll
I
say
guess.
to echo, if that's okay, because I think
Sure.
it's an appropriate space to say as well that, like as the sheet indicates, riffing an educator is the absolute last thing that we want to do as a school. And we will look at, we have combed through just about every potential source of revenue to see what we can increase and every potential source of expense to see what we can decrease. I mean, we're shaving bits and pieces here and there to see if collectively it will add up to something that we can hold on to one more staff member. I know, having had to make those kinds of cuts in the past, it's a terrible conversation to have with an employee, because an employee-employer relationship is built at the hiring stage where we're like, this is a new person. There are people that are under Mr. Branch's wings to take into his charge as staff at the school. I know he takes that very seriously. So should any of you I have my 1 a.m. wake up to go, hey, wait a minute, I just thought of this. If anyone has a 1 a.m, hey, wait a minute, I just thought of this suggestion, I am open before Mr. Branch is sitting across from staff to anything to toss our way. I'll take anyone's ideas moving forward, because I think we will do what it takes to try to avoid having to cut as many as possible. If we can take 6 down to 5, that to us is a win, to have one more person that we don't have to look at in that direction. So just to put also, again, for the audience that's that may be here in attendance, just to know that it is the last resort of a school when there is no other place for us to try to rescue funding to look at reducing the teaching force, the classroom force. So of course, the first thing that we looked at was non-teaching staff, which is not necessarily a fair place to look, but has the potential to the least impact in the day-to-day lives of the kids. And simply the non-teaching staff that we hired this year, we felt were just essential. We need an office manager who is focused on tending to student records and things. It's better if we have a receptionist to do that. So we had to get the receptionist hired. It's better if we have another counselor. Better if we have an interventionist. Like they're the positions that we hired that were new to the school this year were all ones that we felt better serve the students that we have and the families that we serve. So yeah, any 1 a.m. epiphanies, please feel free to call, text, email, however you need to get that to me.
Very good. Yes, and I would very much like to avoid this conversation in 12 months. So, but for right now, I think it's a sound plan. It's documented in our faculty and staff handbook. So we're following that process, and as painful as it is, it's the hand that we've been dealt. So, any further discussion, fellow board members?
Just,
Yes, ma'am.
sorry, I just have a question either for Mr. Branch or for Mr. Colander. Is part of the plan before you actually put the point system together? I mean, having just like is there any volunteers to either go part-time, or is that something that's ever offered, or is that not a conversation that you feel comfortable doing?
I've not thought about it that deeply because I will just be transparent. It's for me, that would not be a conversation I'd be comfortable putting out to staff in general. It may be a good idea. There may be some staff who are saying, oh, I was actually thinking of leaving it this semester and going back to my old school. I just didn't let anyone know because I didn't want to get, there may be some shortcut solutions to a degree in that sense. But it's not something I've done in the past. I don't know, Mr. Branch, if you thought about that.
No, and I think that's a possible solution to the problem. But again, you have to take into consideration that part-time that cuts their pay, and a lot of our teachers, because we had this conversation with one in particular about the amount of income being made or paid to teachers. And so I would be willing to have that conversation with teachers if they are open to that solution.
I was just curious to see if that was something that had been either done in the past or not. So
yeah, we had sometimes an idea of who we felt based on tones within emails. There have been a couple of staff that I actually let Mr. Branch know about, and Justin and I talked about some staff that looked like the tone of their email is shifting towards them potentially finding that the Explorer Academy is not where they want to be. So we sort of tried to play that for what it's worth, in the sense that like we're always respectful and professional with them and things, but also kind of trying to see if we've had a couple that have kind of made some ultimatums about I expect X otherwise, and we're doing our best to explain our policies very clearly and not sort of giving into that particular mentality about it, because it is hard. Part-time positions are easier for non-classroom teachers just because of the model, but I think it's worth putting the feelers out, I suppose, Mr. Branch, and I'll talk to Principal Valdez about it as well, that if there are some people that are anticipating either a move in their future, spouse heading away that they're thinking about following and before the school year ends, something like that, if there are some people that meet that, just put the feelers out and see if there's some potential there that we're not seeing yet.
Good stuff. All right. Any further discussion with regards to the RIF motion? All right. Very good. Well then, Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve the plan for the potential RIFs as presented by Mr. J. Colander?
Yes, sir. Chair Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Member Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
Member Heather Anderson,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney. Aye.
Thank you all. And we now move into section 7 of our agenda, but we're skipping over A because we've moved that and going right into the transportation section. So, Karen, I believe you and Lisa and Alicia might be up on deck here.
Yeah, I'm just gonna move, I just moved Katie back and then I think, I don't know if I'm
Thanks,
supposed to move.
Katie.
Yeah, she's off in attendee land now.
Yeah,
And bring
thanks.
Lisa forward. I think Alicia's here just if we have questions or need her, because she's been doing transportation for so long. So I'm just gonna move Lisa to the panel for now. But I think that'll take care of it. There we go. So board members, if I could start with number 1, um, some of you may be aware of some of the struggles we've had with contracts and buses and whatnot with Herrera Construction, but as part of the problem, or I don't know, the situation, Lisa's going to speak to a little bit later, but one of the things we came across was regarding regulation that I wanted to just share with the board for you to be aware. It is linked on your agenda, but I can share my screen as well. It's from the New Mexico Administrative Code regarding your role, very specifically your role regarding renewing existing contracts generally, and more specifically for transportation. But it's saying you should request the following information, and I don't really need to read this to you, but there are a couple of highlights I want to just point out: that you are allowed to evaluate the services that have been rendered, determine whether the contract's been met, let the contractor know of your evaluation, if it's for renewal, that they cure any deficiencies, um, and of course, provide any proposed or anticipated changes in the boundaries or routes and attendance, which of course, Alicia Biotto and now Lisa Hughes take care of that aspect of it for you, because we base our routes on school student attendance and where they live. And they do a lot of work on getting those set up for you. You can't exceed available resources and provide notice to the state. We have been handling all of that for the most part for you, but I just wanted to emphasize that the regulation from New Mexico Administrative Code specifically assigns these responsibilities to the board. And I just thought it was important for you to see that code because of what we're going to be discussing tonight specifically. I actually hadn't seen this until recently, so there's that. And with, go ahead.
So that's all fine and dandy, but we're sort of stuck with Herrera. We don't have a whole lot of other options to negotiate and
That is very
leverage
true.
other companies to get what we need. We're kind of stuck, and I don't think we're the only ones in that pickle. But
You
I
are
get I get the spirit of 6.43.2.12. I get it. But at the end of the day, we're not holding a hand, we're holding a card.
Yes,
So.
and for the rest of you that don't know, Herrera has a monopoly on the bus transportation in our state, but particularly in the Albuquerque area. Most other buses are district owned, right? So the district has their own buses, which I'm not proposing we should or can do. But I did want to just share that because we do have some concerns we're going to be talking about later, and we need the board is what drives and has to decide on steps to take. I did also link the 2 contracts that we currently have for the buses, just as a reminder for you, but there's one contract with 17 buses that are for the hubs that are within the Albuquerque district, and then 3 buses for those that have to stop outside, because as you all know, we've been transporting kids and will continue to do so at least until Rio Rancho is serving all grade levels, because right now there are many students who travel from Rio Rancho, for example. or from Bernalillo or wherever. And I think we've talked about this a little bit, but I'm working with the PEC, and Lisa and I will be working with them and transportation folks at PED to argue about this boundary issue, and where kids should be allowed to be transported for any charter school in our state, because the way the transportation department for PED is interpreting the law, which is an old law prior to charter schools, um, is in my opinion an equity issue. For example, there are no charter schools in Bernalillo, and yet we are not technically allowed to use PED money to transport kids from Bernalillo to Rio Rancho or to Albuquerque or to any charter school, which seems quite unfair. That means students in Bernalillo don't have an option. So more on that later, but we wanted to provide those contracts in case you wanted to review them. And particularly, there is a section that we're going to be talking about a little bit later, and I wanted to be able to bring. So this is just there's nothing to do on this part. I just wanted to share that. And Chair Molina, good point that we have very little leverage in terms of, and we can't afford to lose our transportation provider either. But with all that, I think I'd like to just go into something that Director Hughes and I have been working on prior to the issue we're about to talk about in closed session. But prior to that issue, Director Hughes and I have been working on the responsibilities of the LEA, the local education agency, which is the school in our case, and what our responsibilities are as outlined in statute and regulation. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Hughes and how we wanted to address that. And again, this was prior to the issue that we want to talk about. So this was something we wanted to do anyway. And I think Director Hughes, if you want me to share, I'm happy to do that since it looks like you're in a vehicle. But I'm going to actually turn it over.
I am.
I'm going to turn it over to Director Hughes to discuss this LEA responsibilities section. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. Karen, if you will share your screen with the LEA responsibility document that is linked in the agenda, that would be great.
Sure. Let me see if I can fit the right screen. Are you seeing memorandum of understanding?
Perfect.
Yeah, okay.
We are. So good evening, Chair Molina and members of the board. My name is Lisa Hughes and I am the Director of Transportation. We are fortunate, like Karen mentioned, that we do offer transportation services for our families to access our educational program, and it is important. We do currently have the contract with Herrera School Buses and Coaches, and they currently provide 20 of our bus routes each day, 17 on one contract and 3 on another contract. In that, there are contractual obligations that must be fulfilled by the bus vendor that are, and the New Mexico statutes annotated NMSA. Since we are contracted with Herrera Bus Company and we are the LEA, we have put together this MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, NMSA, that we need to ensure are being followed by Herrera Bus Company, because there is some of the things in there that says the LEA will make sure this is happening. The LEA will make sure that there's the responsibilities of the bus vendor, there's responsibilities for us. So this will ensure they are aware of all the requirements set forth to be operating school transportation, and to make them aware that we know all of the items that they are supposed to be doing as outlined in this MOU, and that needs to be occurring. So if approved by you, I will then meet with Herrera Bus Company, go over the MOU with them, and have them sign it as well. We will then keep the documentation of the MOU to ensure we are meeting obligations of providing the bus transportation as outlined in our contract in NMAC and NMSA. So that is the overview of this. We pulled all of this from the NMAC and NMSA that we are supposed to be having them following. A lot of it talks about pre and post trip inspections, all of these general requirements. And we want them to know that we know of everything that they're supposed to be doing, and we want this memorandum of understanding to be signed in order to have that attached and be part of the contract as well. So with that, I'll stand for any questions. Hope you had time to go over that, and I'll stand for any questions.
And I just want to add that there's nothing in here that is not required in statute or regulation.
Correct.
It's just a way of us documenting everything that is.
Will Herrera be given an opportunity to amend this document in any way, or is it a sign, don't sign, go, no go situation?
They all have to be doing it anyways. There's nothing in there that is not already presented to them in NMAC or the NMSA that they shouldn't already know. So it all has to be done no matter what, whether we have this MOU or not. So it's nothing that there is not aware of already.
Okay.
And so,
Yeah.
but to your point, we could certainly offer for them to edit or revise anything, but there's going to be a lot of pushback on that because it's required by PED and by the state law. So,
Yeah, but the guy with the gold gets to make the rules and they have the gold, unfortunately. So the reason I bring that up is I'm very familiar with a lot of this language, having run a commercial fleet once upon a time, and a whole bunch of this is what over the road truckers have to do. This is not unique to buses. It's more stringent on buses because you're carrying real people as opposed to televisions. But I don't see them not agreeing to this, but I could see them creating friction because they can. And based on past dealings with them, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But you're right, all of this is DOT, NHTSA, government regulations with regards to coaches and people moving. So there's none of this is made up by us. I just want to point out that they could be difficult in this. I hope they're not. I absolutely hope they're not. But again, the one with the gold gets to make a lot of the rules. So, yeah, I don't have any objection or any concerns about the document itself because it is all supported by statute regulations and requirements from organizations way above our pay grades.
I would add just that though they hold the gold, their money pot is the PED Transportation Bureau.
Absolutely.
And if they're not willing to agree to this, us alerting PED Transportation to that would present a bigger problem, right?
Yes, it would.
For all their contracts. This is just what we're concerned about, Chair Molina, is that the statutes very clearly and regulations very clearly read that we, as the LEA, are responsible to make sure this is happening. I would prefer to have an agreement that says they said they're doing it rather than us going and perusing their files and having to
Yeah. Oh,
supervise them.
absolutely. No. Totally agree. Totally agree. So yeah, I think this is sound, and probably going forward be part of the contractual agreement that we do every year. Is this is signed at the time of the contract being signed as well. So let's make sure that's part of our process. Very good. Well, before we continue on with any discussion, I would like to move to approve the LEEA responsibilities and memo of understanding drafted for EDETA buses and coaches. If I could have a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? I kind of got the cart in front of the horse there a little bit with regards to this document for those of you who have had an opportunity to read it. And like I said, a lot of this is familiar to me, and it's all absolutely in line with either a federal or a state rule, regulation, law, statute. Pick your poison. All of these are driven by that, especially because they are school buses and not just hay hauling pieces of equipment. So nothing here seems unfair or unreasonable to me. And like I said, going forward with EDETA coaches or whomever we get the contract with, this needs to be part of that discussion. So fellow board members, any other questions, comments, concerns with regards to this document and presenting it to EDETA coaches? All right. Well then, Ms. Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve the LEA Memorandum of Understanding from Explore Academy to Edeta Buses and Coaches as drafted and presented.
Yes, sir. Chair Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Member Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
and Member Heather Anderson,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney. Aye.
Motion passes. Lisa, it's always a pleasure to see you here. We miss you in your previous role, but thank you so much for being here and for presenting this. And if you get any pushback from Edeta Buses, please let me know. And Lisa's frozen, so I'm not sure if she heard any of that or can reply.
Most definitely, and thank you for your support of all
Absolutely.
you do for our school.
Miss, I think you might want to turn off your video because it's a little choppy, but I think I heard thank you for your support and for what you do for our school.
Yes. And likewise, Lisa,
Yes.
you are an absolute godsend for all of this. So thank you so very much. All right, we are on section 6 of our agenda,
You are
subsection
welcome.
B. And yes, ma'am. Subsection B3. I'd like to move to go into closed section to discuss item 6B3 with regards to issues with a bus driver. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Heather. And Ms. Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to move us into a closed session to discuss said item?
Yes, sir. Chair Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Member Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
Member Heather Anderson,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney. Aye.
All righty. Miss Karen, do you have a room for us to scooch over into?
Absolutely. I just sent all of you an invite. I sent it though to your personal email because I don't have it all set up for all the new emails.
Mhm.
But I'm going to also put it here in the chat and I'm going to pause the recording because we're going to be going into closed session.
All right. I move to adjourn from the closed session that dealt with agenda item 6B3. If I may have a second.
Second.
Thank
Thank you,
Aaron.
Mr. Hamilton. All right. And Ms. Dottie, if you would please conduct a roll call vote to adjourn our closed session regarding agenda item 6B3.
Yes, sir. Chair Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Member Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
Member Heather Anderson,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney. Aye.
All right. Our closed session is adjourned and we're back to our main session with our attendees in attendance. Very good. And then I would like to move to approve the sending of the letter discussed during the closed session to Edeta Buses as written. If I could have a second, please.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Miss Heather. Thank you. Thank you. I don't think we need to have any further discussion on that, so I'm going to go right into the vote. Ms. Dottie, if you would please conduct a roll call vote to approve the sending of the letter discussed in the closed session to Edeta Buses and Coaches.
Yes, Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
Heather Anderson,
Aye.
Dottie McKinney. Aye.
All right, it is approved. Thank you very much. And section 7 of our agenda was the closed session, so that is finished. So we jump right into section number 8 and we hand it over to Jake, Alicia, and company.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. So, of course, our first report is actually from Alicia, so I hand it over to her.
Actually, I think I advised Alicia per Chair Molina's advice that if we had any questions, we'd let her know. But her report was provided last month and is again linked on the agenda this month for the Director of Operations report. Did anyone have any questions? Should I invite Ms. Bayardo to join us or are we good?
The only question is, how in the heck do you sleep? When do you sleep? Because seriously, I can't even think at that level. So, no, I don't have any questions with regards to it. I did give it a hearty review and had to stop halfway through and get a drink of water. So, outstanding work once again, Mrs. Byardo. Very well done. But I don't have any questions, and there's nothing to. We don't have to do a vote or anything. This is informational. So, if you haven't had an opportunity to read it, please do. But if you're wondering why Alicia's part of the team, it's right there in black and white and absolutely, absolutely priceless. And she's nuclear powered, I'm convinced. So
Excellent. If there are none, then the next agenda item is Ms. Katia Pride. We can promote to panelists so she can join us for marketing.
yes, I'm quite anxious to hear about this.
And while I'm doing that, for the record, Ms. McKinney, can you please note that we have lost Aaron Hamilton from the meeting?
Mm,
I don't know if it's technical. He didn't announce. He just has disappeared and I don't see him, but I'll keep watching.
yes, thank you.
He did post in the chat. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll just note that he had to leave at 7:20.
All right, yep. It's 7:20. We still have a quorum, so we are still rocking and rolling again. Well, hello, Ms. Pride. Welcome to the panel. We're very excited to hear what you have to say.
Hi, yeah, so I can kick it off, or Jake, I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to open with. Nope.
I can, yeah, does it help you if I lead you in a little bit? So
Go for it.
sure, I'll give this context is all that we had. Here's a blast from the past. We met when Mr. Christopher Jones was the principal of the school. We met, he and I and Miss Pride, to talk about marketing moving forward. And at that point, I think we had been looking, if I remember correctly, Katia, we had about 1,500 applications that had been accepted. We were looking at about 1,500 positions bringing in. So at that point, we were discussing how do we build on top of the current numbers that we have at the time. There was a follow-up meeting. Of course, obviously, that was a blink, and then Mr. Jones stepped down, and we had Mr. Branch brought in as principal. So we did a follow-up meeting on that with Mr. Byardo that we shared out some ideas of how to market moving forward. And from that point on, I think the work has kind of taken off, and I don't want to take anything away from Katia being able to share out what she's done in the background. So I will pass it to you.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, so we did see, right, we saw a significant drop this year. Again, some key factors I can kind of point out on that, but we were starting the year at around 1,560, and that's not even all the applications we got. Looks like total applications for this school year as of today's date are around 1,500. So we had a ton of applications that came in, and that's on top of, right, what we had returning. So those students are on top of what we had returning. Now, obviously, not all of them enroll. Some of the major issues we saw, just the top 4 that we saw were, the first one is late drops. We saw a lot of students who came in, enrolled, had a schedule, and were completely set, and then decided to drop with us in around August. Again, kind of hard to start filling those spots if we don't know that they're available. So we did, right? We filled to capacity at the lottery. We continued with rolling enrollment, rolling marketing, but those late drops really hurt us this year. So those are the students, like I said, that either said yes, they intend to return, and then, right, they're all the way with us all through the summer, all the way until August, and then they decide to drop. Then we have the changes in busing and the changes in transportation. We had, some different routes and things. I won't get into too much of that, but we had some changes in routes, some changes in busing, PED and everything. So that messed with us a little bit. Routes shifting, parents who, our buses were filling up, and parents who just could not make that work. We also dealt with, right, the late admin shift, the shift in, Mr. Jones leaving, and then us not having a solid candidate for principal for the elementary until later in the game. And then the last issue was the gym. I think a little bit of the sports side of things really kind of held back some of those applications that we saw, that we would have seen. So we enrolled past enrollment. We just saw a significant drop over the coming months. So anything on that, or do you want, I mean, I have a plan. I can go into my plan moving forward if there's any questions on that we can touch on.
Let me make sure I've got the math straight. So we had 1,100 whatever students returning from last year to this year, and an additional 1,500 applications coming in.
Mm-hmm. I had 1,500 applications come in from the K through 12.
And we converted less than 10% of those into enrolled students.
Well, so I would have to break down the numbers exactly, because it depends on when you're looking at who left from intent to return. So what we do is we send out the intent to return, we get that number, and we say this is how many spots we can fill. So for example, at 3rd grade this year, we did not admit anyone at the lottery at 3rd grade because we had 100% coming back. So none of those applications would have gotten brought in because we fill past capacity, right? So we were above capacity in 3rd grade. Now, fast forward into August, all of a sudden we have 10-day no-shows, students who decided they don't want to come, but they waited until August to let us know. Right. And so what happens then is the problem becomes students are already established in a school, or they've already gone somewhere else and they're no longer interested in coming off the wait list. So that's how we burn through a lot of those applications.
Sure.
But yeah, so we had it over, I mean, the reach is there. The digital marketing, everything that we're doing is pulling families in. It's just a matter of seeing, kind of where we can halt those drops.
Of the 1,500, loose percentage, what's the split between K-5 and 6-12?
I would have to get those numbers for you because off the top of my head, I don't know. I would say K through 5, I can tell you we still have, especially in 3rd and 5th grade, we still have a pretty hefty wait list, but we're at capacity in those grades. Mm-hmm. So, and at the K to 5, we are going to meet capacity in basically every grade level. 2nd grade might be one short, but we're still waiting on confirmation of how many students actually show up tomorrow that have enrolled with us. So the K to 5 is at capacity and has been at capacity. Where we see a struggle with recruiting is typically those upper grades, right? Mm-hmm. The kind of the 9, 10, and then 10, 11, 12 are just so difficult to fill those seats just because they're already established and don't want to move, or they have friends in high school. So those seats are where we most struggle.
Okay. Yep. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So moving forward, we've been doing this for a few years now, but monthly information sessions, those are going to start up. We did have one in October for this school year. Based on the turnout and kind of parent interest as we've moved forward, we are going to start those in November. Just making sure we're inviting the community in, getting to see us, getting to see the building, and getting them interested right before our application opens in December. Boosted social media content is going to continue. Right now, we're doing it weekly to try and fill those spots. We're going to kind of move to monthly in November, save us a little bit of money, and then weekly we're going to start going boosting social media posts weekly to try and get those families in the door. The weekly posts will start in December after the application is officially open. So we'll go monthly in November, and then it'll start weekly in December. Mr. Colander and I are both working along with Mr. Branch to find community partners. We've had a handful of parents who are, wanting to bring their kids into the school. And so in turn, they're like, oh, is there any way I can support them? Can we hang a flyer in your business? So we're working to find some community partners that are willing to work with us to help promote the school. We're working with more social media content. One thing we do want to do and that we're trying to do now is beef up the social media content. I don't know how else to kind of word that, but make it so that we are gaining this emotional attachment to the school. We want families to see that we offer homecoming dances. We offer sports. We have sports schedules. Like we have different sports, we have this nice facility, we have things like that. So we're working to highlight all that. We have moved into, so we're on Facebook and Instagram, and we're also moving into TikTok. The way that's working is just featuring, you know, fun projects that kids are doing. And we are tagging it so that when it goes into the For You content, it's basically free advertising, right? So when I hashtag them and code them correctly, they're able to pop into streams for students who are target age. And those, you know, target ages are obviously, right, K to 12, but an emphasis on the areas that we need, which would be 9 through 12, is where I'm really focusing on TikTok, right? Because elementary, I don't know, but maybe I don't assume many elementary kids don't have TikTok. We have started to kind of expedite the enrollment process. We've really worked to make sure we are getting them in the door, and you know, they can come in, setting up registration appointments, making sure we're holding meet and greets and enrollment nights. At those, we are going to work a little bit more on the buy-in, meaning like we want them to be able to buy shirts and really like commit to joining us. That's one of the ways we're hoping to combat kind of these late drops, is like, you've already bought your uniforms, you've already bought these things, so you can come join us. Same thing, flyers in local businesses. I know we did our community centers and libraries. Typically we'll rotate out community flyers, and any businesses that we typically stop by. I know Mr. Colander and I both have flyers in our car, and every time we get out, you know, we're putting them up anywhere in the community that's possible. I'm also working with the city to see about doing some summer presentations. This summer, I actually got pulled into a lifeguard meeting, and I was able to like present on the model, right? Those are a lot of teens who take those jobs. So working to see if we can find a way that we can come in and just present the model. Hey, we know you're looking for high school. So that is also in progress. So those are some of the things kind of on the horizon. We are, now that we're rolling out of this year, we're starting to see a lot of families who, oops, I applied for next year on this application. So we are keeping track of those families, reaching out to those families, and yeah, following through with them. We don't have any major plans right now for a mass mailer or anything like that. We kind of tend to, those cost quite a bit of money. We're trying to hold off to see kind of where that goes and where enrollment leads us. We are going to start utilizing a text messaging system that has allowed us to better communicate with parents who maybe, you know, are working during the day, but need, you know, X or Y for their enrollment, where they have a quick question. So we've been able to utilize that to better communicate with parents. So we're opening up communication to them as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you think the top 3 most effective mechanisms that you described tonight are going forward? I mean, they're all good, but what are your if you only could use 3, what would those be?
I would say the info sessions in connection with the social media as a general whole, the social media power. Again, it's a little difficult because we're a school, right? This is not a decision. We're not just trying to get them to buy any product or anything where they take a chance, right? This is their child. So we really have to work to make that emotional connection, to make them see that this model is for their student, and to really commit to, you know, we have steady teachers, we have happy staff, our class numbers look, you know, to really reel them in. And I think moving forward, our social media, being able to show that we have components of what a traditional high school would have, and being able to show, you know, some of the fun projects, showcasing all that, and being able to really reel them in. So I would say the social media, along with the monthly info sessions, letting them get to know us. And then really the community partners are also going to play a big role. If the community if the community knows us and we support them and they support us, it's going to be a really good for word of mouth overall.
Yes, Miss Dottie.
Patty, I just had a thought. Have you guys thought about or looked into LinkedIn? Because I work on the professional services staff for CES, and we do a tremendous amount of disseminating information on LinkedIn. And thinking of the connection of, you know, business people, I mean, it's just like a whole new captive market, if you will, of possible parents that would maybe it would generate interest in the Explore Academy. Just an idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I will definitely look into that. I have not really thought about that happening yet, but yeah, that's something I can definitely investigate and look into. Thank
Yeah,
you.
just look into it and see what you think. I'll be interested to know.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
So it seems
thank
like
you.
it seems like you have to sell, so to speak, to two markets, the parents and the students, right? And especially if the students are
Mhm.
really pining to get in there, then the parents are going to be more motivated. But if the parents are
Mhm.
also well educated about what we do and they have a student who's struggling, then they have an option. So it sounds like you would need a two-pronged approach on that. And I think LinkedIn is not a bad place to do because that's all old people. That's all adults, professionals, right? You're not going to see students on LinkedIn, but you will see students on TikTok, Instagram,
Mhm.
Snapchat
Yeah,
for that matter, right?
Yeah, just
and that
go at it in a different direction.
yeah, no,
Just a
absolutely.
thought.
I'm always open to it. Absolutely. And we, when it comes to this type of enrollment, again, another just to add to the late drops that we saw, we also saw to where, unfortunately, right, we get to capacity and we can't take siblings.
I understand. Yeah.
So if our, you know, student who's in 8th grade has a sibling who was in 5th grade, we only opened 4 5th grade spots. And so now, right, that student's sibling didn't get in, mom and dad don't want to do 2 separate drop-offs. So then we, you know, we see a decrease in enrollment just because they're like, no, we want them at the same school.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
So
no perfect answer to this by any chance, by any means, but yeah. Yes, Miss
And
Mark.
I'm sorry, Jake, you were going to say something?
no, I'll go after you. Thank you.
I was just going to ask, would it be possible for us to get a list by grade level of the applications that come in, and the numbers of by grade level?
yeah, I mean, yeah, for this year, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, just going forward, either
Yeah.
this year or just going forward.
Yeah, being able to get like an enrollment essentially update or count. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, just how many, like what applications come in when y'all do the lottery and
Yeah.
I know I've heard in the past, I don't know if it's still true, but I've heard it where kids go into the lottery or whatever, and then they back out. So one will get in and then they pull out. I don't know. It's just, there's all kinds of things that parents seem to when they want just one kid to get in and not the other. So there's so
Yeah.
many things that are working, I know, against us anyways, or any charter school.
So
All right.
I will jump in with, you know, misery loves company in the sense that we got a referral today for a special education teacher for our K-5, coming from someone who is leaving APS because they also are doing some hefty cutting because their enrollment is way down. So I think it's a weird conundrum, as my wife has said, that New Mexico talks about having a teacher shortage while they're cutting teachers, and that doesn't make sense to her. But I'll put this out there, and I think this bears having maybe a more strategic meeting or time to sort of chat through the space, because obviously I think what Ms. Pride just presented, it is the challenge of X number of applications combined with X number of kids transferring out of the school is where we're having a difficult time. That even if what it looks like is sufficient applicants and sufficient acceptances, we're losing kids. And I shared the APS thing to say everybody's losing kids. Like where they're going is a homeschool world, and various other things. But I think we have to walk a fine line in the sense that when I'm presenting to parents on those informational sessions, and one of the slides I share, which I invite, by the way, the board, you're welcome to come to any of those. I think Anthony has sort of revamped what those look like, including student presentations. And my part got cut down pretty significantly, which is always a good thing when I talk less. So, and kids getting to talk, I think he's designed something really cool. But the part about when the mission statement that the parents repeatedly refer to, I ask them to read it and tell me anything that stands out. And they always point to personalized, unique, individual pathways. Like It's about what you're going to do for my kid as an individual. And so I imagine that in their minds, they're picturing small school environment. Teachers, they're looking for little, they're looking for small. That's why they're shopping charter, is they don't want big school experience. That's one end. And then the other end, like Katia is mentioning about advertising, we do have all these things that kids at big schools have. And I'm torn about that because I don't know that a parent who is leaving a charter school because their kids aren't having enough big school experiences really wanted a charter school in the first place. They may have wanted somebody that tended more to, a behavioral need or get their kids out of a toxic friend group or something. But when you're leaving a charter school because you're saying, well, I don't see marching band and tackle football games out at the stadium, well, then did you want a charter school, or is that really what was in your interest level? Whereas the parents who are coming and saying, I want that unique, personalized, individualized, like those are the parents who I would be afraid to let down, to say somehow we didn't live up to that, because that was the thing that makes us a charter and makes us
Correct.
a choice for a small school. And so I do think we need to drill down into what we're seeing in those kids that are choosing to leave, because I think Katia's work is cut out for her on the recruitment and the marketing side to bring fresh kids into the school. And I think our work on the school side, to be frank, we have our work to do in terms of why kids are choosing to leave, so that we make sure we market to the right group. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't want to market to the group that says, oh, it's just like a big school. And they come in and it's not, because we're a charter and we can't ever be like a big school. Or the group that says, oh, it's a small school. And they come in and they go, well, yeah, there's 18 or 16 in the classroom, but my kid's walking the halls with 1,000 other people in this building. And that doesn't feel very small to me. And parents pull their kids for smaller environments. I have to think the homeschool route is a response to an environment that overstimulates, creates over anxiety, too many, right? Just the socialization, I have to think, is what's driving them to that. Not because I haven't heard that people have challenged significantly at all anything regarding our academic program. And we do have kids that leave because the ABF is challenging to meet, but I don't see kids that are leaving because they say we're not getting challenged enough very often. It's a rare kid who's looking for, I want AP or I want more dual credit, right? So I think it's worth having a conversation as we head into the kicking off. I mean, as Katia, I think, as you mentioned, our parent event on October the 3rd, which was designed to be a recruitment event for the 9th of October, was more a recruitment event for August in terms of who showed up. There were more parents there looking for next year than they are for this year. So it's already underway, but I think it's worth it to say, who is our audience with this? Because I think if we advertise one thing and produce something different, we run the risk of not ever being able to maintain those numbers for retention that are so crucial to making sure those enrollment targets hit.
You bet. Yeah, I'm not saying do a dragnet, and it has to be. This is an oxymoron. It has to be a wide audience with a very specific message, right? So, and I think you and I chatted over lunch one day, Jake, on when we do an exit interview, is figuring out what attracted them in the first place and what changed between what attracted them and why they're leaving, right? Was it a perception issue? Did we sell something that they didn't understand fully? And that's going to be difficult to get, but a little bit would be something worthwhile because something with EA attracted them in the first place. And then here it is late August, early September, and they're pulling their kids out. What's the gap, right? It's just a gap analysis based on why they came. And some of it could be very well what you said, right? Is they're trying to get their kid out of a toxic friend group and we had a spot, or whatever it is, right? Sometimes it's not what the recruiting wasn't exactly what brought him in. It was an easy out for something. I think that's more hopefully more the exception than the rule. But what was it? Was it hey, you promised us sports and a gym, and here it is October, and you don't even have a roof yet? What was it? What was the attraction, and then what changed? And that would be very interesting to know. So yeah, I think educating the community is huge, but then the message is very targeted as to this is what we do and this is what we don't do. And I think that message is very important, is we're not an all things to all people program, right? This is what we do. This is our strength. But but educate the entire community so that they understand what we are.
Mm.
And hopefully the folks that are very attracted to that are the ones that not only apply, but want to stay for the first year, the second year, the 12th year, and we stay a viable part of the community. So, and I'm not a marketing expert. I mean, I've got a business degree, but I'm not a marketing expert, but it seems to me that that's the overall thrust of the marketing is let everybody know and then spell it out very carefully when they spark an interest. Hey, I'm interested. Great. What about this was interesting? And what do you think you're going to get if you put your child here? Or what do you think your child's going to get because they're so excited about Explore Academy? So
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, the one thing I'm very cautious about is narrowing our market too much. Because we do see, right, we over enroll at the lottery. In general, we over enroll at the lottery. Just because we know, right, typically 8th grade, we start to see that drop. After 8th grade, we start to see those kids pull out. Now, we've seen it for, a multitude of reasons, be it again, sports, which right now we're not at the capacity, right, keep those kids. If they are truly competitive in sports and they want to go we're not at that capacity. But as far as that's why when I mentioned the social media message, right, it's an overall broad message, and that paired with the information sessions should be able to give the parents enough of an idea of what to expect. And kind of give them, let them meet the staff, let them meet it more at the school level, right? They're meeting me at the broad level with the big audience. And then we're saying now comes the information session to hear exactly what you're getting. But we're also seeing kind of this battle between parent and child now, especially at the high school level, right? Where they really will vocally say, I don't want to switch schools, and then parents are kind of like, well, I applied here, I got you in here. I really want you to go here because I think it's good for you. But then, they changed their minds because of, a student saying, oh, well, I have friends, or I don't want to move.
Sure.
So.
Absolutely. Yep. That's the magic of marketing.
It is.
It's not an exact science.
As Karen said, it's definitely, a tightrope walk down the middle, right? That it's really a balancing act. And again, if we over enroll to the point where we no longer are small class sizes, now it's really difficult to do that, right? Because we'll be at capacity in each classroom.
Right.
If we over enroll, anticipating a drop, and then we don't get a drop, then we no longer are honoring our small class sizes.
Yeah.
So it's really this balancing act of trying to make sure that they, understand our message, understand who we are, commit to us, and actually come when the time is set.
And I think it's worth it to note that there are restrictions on what we can ask when they apply in terms of how did you hear about us? What advertising worked? Not similar restrictions after they're a part of it to ask how they heard about us. And we do need to revisit the questions when they leave, because I think the most frequent response I saw last year was going to another school was their answer as to why they're leaving. But that gave us no information. So I think getting to the heart of what you're asking, Chair Molina, about the gap between why you came and what was the turning point at which you decided this wasn't the school for you. And there is a chance that in and of itself might be an attraction and retention tool, and that parents who see that we actually care might go, oh, they are interested. And where I decided was where the grass was greener is not greener. And this, maybe I need to head back. So I think it's worth it for us to put some effort into that work really before we hit the spring. And so that's something that I know Mr. Branch, I think he is still in our attendees, and that's something he and I can work on certainly more. I think the K-12, where I know that kindergarten was seeing a weird push of kids leaving that they hadn't seen in the past, and that's with the exception of one teacher, the same staff, that we saw kindergartners leaving. But I think the majority of where we have the issue is at the 6-12, and so I think Mr. Branch and I together can do some work on that end.
Absolutely. Very good. Any other questions for Katia? Which I think I said right. I want to say Katia because my daughter has a friend named Katia who spells her name like you, but your accent is on the I, correct?
Yes, Katia.
Thank you, Katia.
Yeah, no.
So any other questions, comments, concerns, ideas? I think LinkedIn is pretty clever. So
I will definitely consider.
all right. I don't see any other questions from the board. Katia, thank you very much. I'm eager to
Thank
see
you.
how things progress, and Martha's request as to the breakdown of applications to grade level would be an interesting piece of information for us to know. So the
Absolutely.
intent is not to micromanage this. That is not the board's role, but we are curious. So
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. And I think we
Wonderful.
have
And I
Miss
think we can move right
Lovelady.
along to Katrina.
Yeah,
I mean, I think she is next and
you
move right into
betcha.
that.
Hey, Katrina, you're up. There we go.
Hey there.
Hello, good evening, Chair Molina and the board,
Hello, hello.
Mr. Colander and Ms. Karen. Thank you for having me this evening. Um, I was invited to the meeting this evening to talk a little bit about the kitchen infrastructure grant we had received earlier this year and where we are moving with that and what all it entails. So first, I'd kind of like to give just a quick broad overview of the grant. The official name of the grant is the SKI grant, which is the School Kitchen Infrastructure Improvement Grant. And it was offered by the state of New Mexico. They originally opened it back last November to all schools, public, private, and charter. And then after their first round of distributions, they reopened it only to charter schools with $5 million being awarded strictly to charter schools in the spring. So we applied and received a grant of $500,000 for Albuquerque to basically build a kitchen in our facility and do some improvements at the elementary school and build the main kitchen at the mid-high school where we have the space. The grant also included vehicles to transport food between sites, which is something that is needed for us as a school that is in 2 locations, as well as transporting staff. So it was, you could put in for construction costs, you could put in for equipment costs, and vehicle costs, and that was basically everything it entailed. But when you applied, you had to include all the quotes and estimates from all your vendors, specifically as to what they would be used for, which we did. We included quotes from AIC as our contractor, Heller Mullen as our architect, Chalmers Ford providing the vehicles, and the equipment and smallwares from our food service vendor who would procure them for us. And then once you have been awarded the grant, you have to provide first to the state what is called a notice of obligation. Here is the estimate and quote what we're going to spend it on. And then they, once again, even after the original grant approval, they approve the notice of obligation and say, yes, you can go ahead and spend this money. We procured the items. Explore has to pay for the items first up front and then submit the final invoices from the vendors back to the state to be reimbursed. So Katie had submitted bars to the board for the spending for the grant. So that's basically the broad outline of the grant and how it works. It is very specific to just using it to build the kitchens and procure the items that we need for food service. And we have to provide all the documentation upfront as well as after the fact as to how we have spent the money. So any questions about that portion of it so far?
Not for me.
So right now we are still in the planning process with Doug Heller, who is the architect, as well as AIC with Daniel Griego, who is the project manager for this. With the kitchen portion at Galton, which we have to complete first before then we can move on to the improvements at the elementary school, which are minor at the elementary school. It's some plumbing and electrical upgrades, as well as potentially installing a dishwasher at the elementary school. One of my big goals, which I've had ever since I started at Explore, was to have reusable trays for the students to be served on. So we don't have so much waste as far as paper goods and styrofoam and those sorts of things go. Which, a side note, along those lines as well, I also did just receive a grant from the Chef Ann Foundation, which is a nationwide foundation for a bulk milk dispenser. And one of the requirements of receiving the bulk milk dispenser grant was that you had to have a dishwasher because they want you to serve milk in glasses instead of cartons, again, to eliminate waste. So that's a side note. Once we have the kitchen, we will have the bulk milk dispenser as well, which will be another waste eliminating procedure for us. So the dishwasher is the huge key component for how we're going to operate the program and eliminate waste, which is actually part of Senate Bill 4, the Healthy Universal School Meals Bill. The final rules came out, and a big part of that is eliminating waste or reducing waste, both food waste and paper goods waste as much as possible. So right now, again, we are still in the planning and permitting stage. That's taken way longer than we anticipated. From the city, that is the main holdup right now, is the city approving the permits, as I'm sure you are all very well familiar with. They came back and they told us we needed some ventilation for the ovens, which is typically not something you ever need in a closed cooking situation, but they are requiring us to add the ventilation, and the plumbing is one of the big things as well for the site. So we're ironing all that out right now. In fact, earlier today, there were a couple emails back and forth between Daniel and Doug about these issues. And once we have the permits, they feel the construction will go very quickly. I think by spring semester, we will have the kitchen in place and be able to be serving students that way instead of out of our temporary kitchen right now.
So will the catering company that we test drove last year, are they going to be the ones staffing the kitchen, or is that a whole new process?
Yes, they are. They are already staffing the kitchen, the temporary kitchen that we have. They also provide the driver for the delivery vehicle to go back and forth between Gulton and Masthead. They staff the kitchen. The only staff we provide are our food service coordinator, who is my right-hand woman, who is the on-site day-to-day manager of everything that goes on there, as well as our cashier, because I want our people, someone who is dedicated to Explore, to be the cashier, because that is where our money comes from, is checking out the students. That is where we count and claim our reimbursements. And I want someone who has a vested interest in the school to be in that position. Someone from the catering company, as wonderful as they are, might not be as careful with Explore's resources as one of our own people will be. So that is the only staff we provide at this point. Everything else is provided by the catering company, the vendor.
All right, thank you.
As a side note as well, another side note, we have started the snack sales process, which there are two revenue streams to food service. There's the nonprofit food service account, which is where our reimbursements go through from the state and federal government. And that is very specific as to what that can be used for, money in that account. It can only be used for improvements to the program, such as staff salaries, equipment costs, and construction, things like that. So it is very, very narrow as to what monies in the nonprofit food service account can be used for. Now, snacks, on the other hand, is revenue food sales, and that is a little bit broader of an item as to how we can use those monies. We can use that for paying off unpaid lunch debt from a few years ago when we were charging for lunches. We still are carrying balances for some students that never paid their account. We never wanted to deny a student or a child a meal, so we allowed students to go into the negative. So there are several accounts that have never been paid off. Now, we say as much as possible, we will not release transcripts and diplomas and things like that when students withdraw without paying off that account. But sometimes it's just not feasible to collect on those monies. So now our snack sales, we can use those monies to pay unpaid lunch debt. We can use it again to supplement our staff salaries and buy new equipment and just put it back into the program to just really make the best experience possible for our students, with the best food to fuel their bodies and minds during their school day.
So the snack program is unrestricted funds. You all just determine where those go. Makes sense.
It still has to stay within the food service program,
Correct.
but yes, pretty much it has a
Yeah.
little broader use.
Mhm.
And I will say, we just started the snack program September 19th. And as of last Friday, we had sold $3,500 worth of snacks.
Wow. And how much of that is profit, so to speak?
Roughly half. So when we get the products, they're priced at double the
Right.
cost.
Yeah.
Some
Okay.
are a little bit more. Like there are some chips. I wanted chips to be $2. Some chips are cheaper than other chips. So some we might be making a little more profit off of, some we
Sure.
might be making a little less, but it's roughly half.
All right. Yeah. So you keystone it. All right. Very good.
Any questions about food service right now I can answer for y'all?
No, not at all. It would be kind of fun to know when the grand opening is. I might like to be there for the ribbon cutting.
We definitely want to do a big event for a grand opening. What we're thinking about potentially is a food fair where we have different stations of all the different foods that the vendor can offer, and people can go through and have little samples from each station. So it could be something we could do for the students, maybe during clubs on a Friday, or open it to the general public, staff and parents and the board and everything else, similar to what we did with the tasting events we did last year
Mhm.
when we were selecting the vendor. So yeah, we're looking to do a food fair.
Awesome. Well, we need to hear about that.
Quick question for you, Ms. Lovelady. The design of the kitchen itself, that space, is this a big wall? Is it open, like little Hell's Kitchen vibe that kids can see into where they're working? Is it a walled off, sealed off space where they're cooking? Do you know that design?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. So the back wall, basically between the two exit doors of the flex room, is going to be the enclosed kitchen space. Now, the cooking space where the ovens and all the equipment is going to be is enclosed, that the students cannot see in. We could add windows, but that would be adding yet more expense. So we're keeping that part of it closed off. But the other side of it is going to be open for service. So it's going to be a large open service window that the students, travel down a la traditional cafeteria style. And that will have a view into the kitchen as well, but it's not really open to where the students can see into what the staff is doing in the preparation area.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Miss
Miss.
Dottie.
Katrina, I just want to say, good job, tremendous work. My goodness, you have done so much work and it's so appreciated. Thank you.
I'm so passionate about how we
It
feed our
shows.
students.
Yeah, it
Um,
shows.
yeah, you know, good food will fuel their learning. And
Yeah.
also, I also believe in choice. You know, we are a school of choice. That is our model, that students
Mhm.
get to choose. So when we're only offering them one choice of meal, that's not really within our model. So we need to open
Yeah.
that up to choice. We need to be expanding their palates, you know, exposing them to new foods. If we're only ever serving them chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese and pizza, that's not really educating them in the world of food. You know, we want to serve them Thai coconut, you know, chicken soup and things like that. That's really going to make them think about food in a new way.
That's wonderful. Thank you for your hard work.
My pleasure.
You're here. All right, fellow board members, any other questions or comments for Miss Lovelady? All right, Katrina, well done. Looking forward to
Thank you.
seeing this move along and the invitation to the grand opening.
You will be there with bells on.
All right, outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. I'm going to send you back through cyberspace now. Thanks again.
All right, Mr. Cates, back to you.
Excellent. I'm going to do my part quick because I know we have other things to get to, and I still have a little PTSD from September's meeting going on so long. So I do have a learning celebration to bring up in November to let you know that that is not off of my radar. And we have some cool stuff moving forward. So I'm going to share one thing because in the whole discussion about what we can be doing to keep kids to attract the right kind of student, and that's going to sound um, I want that to come across correctly, the kind of student and the kind of family that's looking for the type of education we provide, while also retaining kids by offering them opportunities. We're working, as some of you know, under that model of we've had a decade working within the walls of the school to make sure that that's optimized. And we need to spend some time working on what happens outside the walls of the school. So we have been digging through a variety of things. There are some travel programs that we are trying to get arranged. There is an organization called the American Exchange Project I met with that does exchange programs for students within the United States and Alaska, and it is fully paid for kids to attend that. The only requirement the school has to do is to put up what they call an exchange project manager, which is somebody on site who not only coordinates kids going out to have exchange experiences, but also is the host for students from other states coming in to have an exchange experience in Albuquerque. We are one of their destination cities. And as of right now, they have a solid agreement with just one school in Albuquerque. We are hoping to be their second or third. They're talking to another one at the same time. We're hoping to be their next school because this is free. It is for our seniors. It's a cool experience. It gets kids here and just gives them other options for what they can do. We have a young man right now who's in Papua New Guinea with his grandfather, and we have found a course called Travel Programs that can allow him to stay enrolled in our school and participating and doing some things while he is out there to continue earning credits at Explore Academy while he's engaged in this sort of month and a half excursion with his family member. In addition to that, we're continuing to open the doors. We just submitted paperwork today through Sonia Carrillo to work with UNM to help guide some of their student teachers onto our campus because we feel that it is opening the doors for kids and for teachers to come and experience our school. And Miss Nora Ellis, if you've not met her, she's absolutely amazing. Our staff are great. She is our career and college counselor, and she's actually going to come in November to talk a little bit more about some of the things that she's working on from hers. But to give you a little preview, we have been building out an internship proposal where we codify what these opportunities could mean for kids. This is still very much in the draft stage. She and I have been working on it last week and into this week to provide opportunities for kids in grades 10 through 12 to again get outside the walls of the school and have real world experiences that help feed into the types of majors that they're selecting. And this in and of itself isn't unique to our school, but it's something that will be new for us to be able to really push. And having some requirements for what makes kids eligible to participate in this, as well as things they would have to do. But ultimately, there's credits that they would earn as a part of this. Ms. Ellis found in the ever shifting nature of our society and culture that young people saying, I could go work at we're working currently with a costume organization, Monumental Costumes. They're a costuming warehouse that did the costumes for the Barbie movie, Oppenheimer. They work with Netflix Studios. One of the women who works in the warehouse is a parent of one of our kids and would love to do an internship opportunity, which included kids helping them. There's some manual labor stuff because they're reorganizing their warehouse, as she says, has over 2 million pieces of costumes and accessories. But also, she's got family and friends that are directors that work for Netflix. She works for a casting agency, producers. So opportunities for kids to get out. And when offered to our students, they asked the question, well, is this paid? And we said, I don't think so. And they said, well, am I going to earn credits in school? And we're like, no, you're going to meet people in the industry that you profess to love. And they said, no, thank you. So we're going to continue to try to push this a little bit in the direction of parents. I know my own children sometimes in their teen years faltered in their motivation. And so we are trying to put something together that we can give out to parents to say, we as a school want to embrace your kids taking advantage of opportunities that are being made available to them. It can be credit bearing, it can be paid. And the thing that I wanted to share out this evening as well is this is scratching the surface. Ms. Ellis has put together a series of internship opportunities where she is connecting with these organizations from
Wow.
credit union, City of Albuquerque paid internships, working on people for the Army apprenticeships. Congresswoman Stansberry has an internship available at her office through Nusenda, I-9 Sports, the Rio Rancho Police Department and Victim Advocacy, as well as a series that are through our parents. But this collection of internship opportunities is what she has started working on building, which is essentially a catalog of things that are available to kids that will give them a sense of what kind of field, if they're interested in things like film or law or grant writing or business, it will tell them what kind of an experience they're going to get. We will walk them through the submission process, what kind of commitment it is, and we're trying to create a translation of total commitment to credits earned at the school to give them that extrinsic motivation, because they're lacking some intrinsic at this time, but also in what areas we feel this most fits in terms of where do these credits come from. Some of these make sense, like working at Monumental Costumes would fit in the film studies major, because that is a really in-depth but internship that involves potential to meet a lot of people in the industry and the growing film industry here. So that would connect to that most positively. Others are not as clear cut. And so offering options under electives will be available to kids. But the reason that I share all this with you is because I think for us, concluding with the Learning Achievement Plan, we would like kids who may not be A students to still have opportunities for this, but they're going to have to do a little bit more to discuss how they're going to meet it. And so we've got some options here of kids who are high GPA, aren't a discipline issue. They can slide right into something. They're just setting up a meeting. Kids that are kind of in that middle 3.0 to 3.5, so they're doing okay, may have had a few moments of indiscretion at the school, can submit an interest essay to Ms. Ellis, so it just gives them a step they need to achieve. And then for our kids that are at the 2.0 to 3.0 range, which means these are kids who are actually not necessarily passing all of their classes and haven't been suspended, but maybe have had a few disciplinary points added, including an interest essay as well as a learning achievement plan, which I kicked out to our academic coach and math interventionist to look at, to say, what can we piece together for kids where they don't take themselves out of the opportunity to experience some of these things, but we know that they're going to have a little bit more of a heavy lifting, because if they couldn't hit that GPA requirement and they're adding to it internship hours, well, what does that mean? And we know that right now a lot of kids at other public schools, hearkening to our previous conversation about big school experience, can earn credits for things like having a job. And so we don't want to take that away from kids, but we want to make sure it's catered to Explore Academy and what it means. And then students who are below a 2.0 or have been suspended, have 3 or more disciplinary points, we take them out of the running for that, because obviously they need to tend better to what's happening within the walls. But the purpose of me sharing that with you all is to just give you a taste that when we looked at our quarterly goals, we had three major things that were part of the goals, which I shared out a couple months ago. We had an academic goal. We were working on collaborating with Newsella as well as working with JSTOR to get opportunities available for teachers to begin implementing tools in their classes to be able to get those reading scores up and to be able to show those increase in achievement scores. We are also looking, of course, at those opportunities for our kids because we feel this is a retention tool. The more things that kids at Explorer Academy have the chance to dive into and experience, the better we feel like they're going to have something that they remember, they walk away from, and they say, I'm glad that I took the opportunity to come to this particular school. So for us, this was really important, and it's something that we've been working on and piecing together. Obviously, it's a work in progress. We don't have it finalized yet, but that's our goal, and we continue to work on that collaboratively as a whole school team. I think Dr. Valdez at the K-5 has been slowly trying to recruit. We have a student teacher that'll be coming on board for just a quarter of the school year, but her intent was to say, yes, we need teachers to come in and be looking at the K-5 as an opportunity for them to be here. And then at our older kids at the 612 campus, what opportunities can we send them out to experience as just a part of their learning journey and their chance to do something unique and different at Explorer Academy. So that is sort of in a nutshell how we're starting with all the other things that you've heard this evening at working on those key objectives for quarter one and what we've been setting aside as our annual goal for the year.
And could be a powerful marketing element as well, right? Especially for those 9 through 12 is offering those internships that might not be available through other venues. So I think it's just another arrow in the quiver.
I think so. And we've had, obviously, some of this is time invested by teachers, and they don't always want to jump in on that, which is understandable. So we're trying to navigate what of these do we need a classroom teacher to support in versus what of these can we handle on sort of the more administrative side. As an example, Monumental Costumes reach out to me and to Katia to say, we want to put your school logo as a partner institution on our website to say we work with Explorer Academy. We need to get that internship solid, but we have to do some groundwork on it because kids are looking for a bit more extrinsic. We talked to the Range Cafe, and we are working on having a rotating art show at the different cafes around Bernalillo, Los Lunas, and Albuquerque. All those things, like you're saying, Chair Molina, all of them get our name out there. Things that have our logo, placards for our student artists, and more importantly, our name out there for the right reasons. Like these are kids being able to showcase their work, kids being able to have these experiences. I love when we can honor teachers and faculty and staff, and that's super important. But I'm all in it for what our kids get to experience as a part of our school. So anything that heightens that for them is, to me, it's a winner, and that's what I want to work on.
Absolutely. And the only reason I'm doing this is for the student and faculty showcases that we have in this meeting. So that's the biggest draw for me. So
Absolutely.
Awesome. No, it's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic, and really excited to see where this goes. But my gosh, you had what, 27, 28 partners already on that spreadsheet. If I got the line count right, that's pretty remarkable already. That's great.
Yeah, and Miss Ellis, one of her other challenges that she took on is I said, how do we get a bigger variety of universities in the door of the school? And she said last year we had 20 schools that came in. The last couple of weeks have just been ripe with school visits and universities coming in. And I said, don't just look for cast your net wide in terms of names, but programs. So looking for schools and universities that have unique program options for their kids. I'm a St. John's alumni, so I love the liberal arts world. I love the alternative educational format that St. John's takes. And I want things like that to show up. What other schools have other things that are different than getting, University of New Mexico and University of Arizona and University of Colorado? Like, where do we go from the traditional to the non-traditional and get them in? And she's doing a ton of work in that. So I can't say enough about some of what she's doing. It may feel a little bit repetitive next week when you get to meet her, but you'll also get to meet some of our students who are both working in some of these things already, as well as from our elementary who are starting to get stuff out into the community if we can get that solidified.
Perfect. Outstanding. That is very uplifting. All right. Any questions with regards to the internship opportunities? Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Jake. I think we're on to item C. Email accounts. Exciting.
Very quick, just a housekeeping thing. If any of you are having any trouble with setting up your new Explore Academy Google accounts, please just schedule a time with me and a few minutes virtually and we'll get it done. And hopefully all of you are proceeding to move to that platform for your governing board communications. And eventually I'm going to stop using your personal emails, but I'm waiting to make sure everybody's shifted over. So that's all for that.
So I tried to get it to forward me something so that it was more visible, and that feature is turned off.
Meaning it was not available to you
Correct. Yeah.
to forward?
So when
Okay,
something shows up there, I'd love it to pop into my Comcast account so I know it's there. I'll still go there to open it
to
and
do it.
reply
Yep.
from,
Okay,
but it would
let
be
me
nice
check
to get a
with,
little
I didn't realize that. Let me check with our IT guy on how
cool.
you can forward.
That'd
And
be
again,
lovely.
I think that's a great idea so that you get noticed quicker without having to go check. But again, as you said, just for the other board members, I would ask if you do that, once we get it fixed, please be sure to use the Explore Academy account to respond.
Right. Yes, indeed. Thank you. All
That's
right.
it for me.
Yes. Set up some time with Karen. All right. Is Mr. Sparks ready?
Well, I don't know if he's ready, but he's here. So I'm going to
All
promote
right.
him to the panel.
Bring him on.
There you go.
Hey, good
Good
man.
evening. How are you all?
Rocking and rolling.
All right. Apologize that you didn't have an opportunity to review these documents before the meeting. I did not receive them until about 4:30 today, but I will walk through them. And thanks for accommodating this on the agenda. So I have had time to go through them now, so I can give you my assessment of them. So there's been some changes since last month when we spoke about this. There's been the addition of about $50,000 worth of personal property equipment that would be included in this overall financing that then is a lease for Explore Academy. And so there are now two separate, actually three lease documents. So what we went over last time was that there is a sublease of the roof of the masthead property to an entity that has been formed for the purpose of entering into a loan agreement. So Divergent Management Group is borrowing funds from a bank called HJ Sims and then is entering into separate agreements with each of the Explore Academy schools for different projects. And so for that masthead roof project, the school would sublease the roof and then simultaneously lease it back in order to obtain the funds needed for that project of about $350,000. $340,000, I think is more the round number. And that would then pay for the work on that roof. And it does have a 1 year commitment in it at a time. And so if the school decides not to renew the lease, you could then terminate that lease, and then the lease to Divergent Management Group, where you're subleasing your roof to them, would terminate by you not renewing your lease. And there is no security interest being taken in any of that property. And so Divergent Management Group nor HJ Sims would not have any ability to go after the school for that. So that's how we're getting around the fact that you have existing debt on that facility, is that there's not being a security interest granted in any of that property. So once a year, if you decide not to do it, you can just get out of it. There would be consequences such as it would impact your ability to refinance debt, acquire additional debt, and all of that, but you would technically be able to get out of it. So now the third lease is for that personal property. Because no security interest is being taken in the roof, we're breaking apart the personal property because that's not covered by any existing debt. And so a security interest would be granted in the approximately $50,000 of personal property. And so the terms of that lease are different. There's no subleasing of the property to Divergent Management, and then Divergent Management doesn't lease it back to you. You all take title to the property. Divergent Management takes a security interest in that personal property. So personal properties, anything that's that movable, from a pen to a chair, printers, whatever is covered. And then you all have a separate lease for that. So we'll stop there and we'll see if there's any questions first.
None from me. Fellow board members, any questions? All right, for John.
All right. So the overall package is being sold at a 10% interest rate, and it is being sold by HJ Sims to mostly individual investors. And as of yesterday, they were still trying to sell about $300,000 of the overall package, and the overall package consists of, sorry, let me get the right window open here. $2,960,000. So between Explore Academy, the Albuquerque location, Las Cruces, Rio Rancho, Arizona, and Las Vegas, I believe. The package is $2.9 million. So they're still working on $300,000 of that. The goal is to close on October 25th, and it is being sold at a 10% interest rate. So when we spoke last month, we had done a maximum interest rate that was higher than that. And now they feel comfortable that it is all going to be sold at that 10%. It's on a 5-year term. You all can prepay the debt at any point. If you prepay the debt up until this summer, I believe July, you're going to pay a 2% premium in order to prepay that debt. Then on a year from the closing, after that July, it'll go to a 1% premium. And then after a year, it'll drop to a no premium. You can just pay at the par amount. And each lease payment, though, has an additional 15% on top of that of what the loan payment is from Divergent Management Group is making to HJ Sims. That 15% is going into a reserve fund, so that if any one of the schools defaults on their loans, there's additional funds there to pay that off. If you pay off these leases early, you stop paying any of that, but that 15% will only be distributed back to the schools at the end of the overall loan. And so after 5 years, assuming that at least one of the schools carried this out for 5 years, then if there was no default, so that money wasn't used, whatever is left, the portion that is attributable to Explore Academy Albuquerque would come back to Explore Academy Albuquerque. But even if you paid this off in 2 months, if this continued for 5 years, that 15% piece you could not get back, and it's only a possibility that you'd get it back.
Right.
But if you decide to go refinance this whole all of your debt, you could pay this off and you're going to stop paying that 15%. And so you're not stuck in this by any means. And that premium that you're paying is a very reasonable time frame to pay that premium. The fact that investors are committing their funds to fund this, and they're going to expect some sort of premium if you're going to pay this off within the first month, because they've committed the funds and then you paid them off right away.
Right.
So to have that 1 year of premium is pretty reasonable. So questions at this point?
Not from me.
Okay. So if you all are ready, you can approve the resolution. Probably with a motion to amend it to reflect today's date. And then allowing board chair to finalize everything, and everything is supposed to be in substantially final form at this point. And so if we would go beyond that 10% interest rate, then you need to call a special board meeting. But what the bankers said on Monday is that it should all sell at that 10%, since they only have that $300,000 left and they have the commitments on their other $2.6 million.
Okay. Very good. Pardon me.
Just one point, I did not link the resolution to the agenda, but I can pull it up if you need it. It was provided at the last meeting. I don't, if that's what you're referring to, Mr. Sparks.
Yes. And I
Here, let me
can
share this.
quickly modify that with the today's date, so that we're going off of the correct one.
All right, let me
But you can take a
see if
look at what was there, and I will update it while you take a look at it.
Heather, did you have any questions with regards to this?
Thank you. I think you answered all of my questions in your presentation. Since I'm new, I just had a question about the termination of the lease. I'm assuming under the payment schedule, it says the last payment is due June 21st, 2029. Is that the end date of the lease after that last payment is made, or whenever that is made?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And in that far right column, the prepayment amount shows how much would be due if you were going to pay it off at any point. But remember, there are two, and so that prepayment amount and that lease payment amount, there is the roof project leaseback agreement that is totaling about $340,000, and then the other one that is the equipment lease that is totaling about $50,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Sparks, I sent you the one I'm thinking is correct. I just need you to check. I also put a link in the chat, and I'm available to share it if we want to, this resolution. But I just changed the date at the end to October 8th instead of September 10th. If this is the correct.
That is the correct one. So
Okay.
So sorry, I didn't get to this as I was reviewing these documents. So if you want to pass this tonight, let me know, and I'll make a couple of tweaks here.
Tweaks with regards to dates, or
to dates, and cap the interest rate at 10% instead of the 12% that it was at.
no objection there.
And address the fact that we have the equipment lease here. So I'm doing that on the one that Ms. Warner just sent over, so it's happening as you see it.
So then the only open change would be dates when the actual dates are known, right? That would be the only. And we can vote on it now with the stipulation that dates would be updated real time. But the rest of the language would be set, correct?
Fairly set. There's a few tweaks in what was sent over that I want to make. And what I am putting in here is that the rental payment should not exceed $12,000. There's additional rent that's estimated in there that is estimated currently to be $244.19 a month. So the expenses of the bond trustee, which is something you have under your existing debt, and the legal fees and the fees of the divergent management group associated with this are going to get charged to the school, their portion under this as well. So that piece is in these documents, but I'm just capping what the regular rental payment would be at $12,000.
So board members, this was the resolution we had on the agenda last month. I did add it to this agenda. I put it in the chat for you, also sharing. But basically it's outlining that you agree to move forward with this and that give permission to proceed and then for it to be signed ultimately by Chair Molina once finalized. Now that Mr. Sparks has provided more detail.
So then the motion would be for the project sublease agreement, the project leaseback agreement, and the resolution, correct?
I think if you approve the resolution, you cover the entire
Cover
thing.
everything? Okay.
I think if you want to just wait, Dustin is tweaking it live and watch him work as we go. But he's wanting to cover that little change about I guess, the property versus the roof piece. So,
all right.
But yes, I think just approving the resolution
And the documents therein.
would be sufficient because he's covering everything in here.
Okay. And the approval from the board to have me as the signer, correct?
I think
Yes.
that's
on behalf of the board.
I think that's contained in here. Yeah, the council appoints the president or chair, whatever.
Yeah, that's fine.
Same thing. So that just the resolution, he's updating it with the titles we've been using, but just approving the resolution would include that.
Okay.
Orders.
All right.
Okay.
Well, that makes the motion a little bit easier to say.
I like to keep it simple method.
Hey, you know who you're working with over here, so simple's good.
No, that's not it. It's just I don't want any of these board members to have serious PTSD after 2 very long board meetings consecutively.
All right. I think I've got all the dates updated, the resolution number changed, and all the spots added in the equipment lease. So if you approve this, Carmelina can finalize everything. If you're ready to move forward.
Okay. Then I, pardon me, will move to approve the resolution to execute documents related to the subleases for additional improvements to 5100 Masthead in Albuquerque, New Mexico. If I could have a second, please. Thank you, Ms. Dottie. We have a second. Any further discussion or questions for Mr. Sparks with regards to all of the documents he's presented this evening?
Chair Molina, if you could actually motion just to approve the resolution, and you can
Okay.
just reference it by the resolution number 2024-10-08A.
-8A. You bet. Now, let me restate my motion. Motion to approve the resolution for Explorer Academy, resolution number 2024-10-08 alpha. And a second on that one, seeing that I had to restate it. Thank you, Miss Heather. Seconded by Heather. Thank you. And any further discussion with regards to this resolution as written and presented? Going once, going twice. All right, very well. Then let us move to a roll call vote to approve the resolution for Explore Academy numbered 2024-10-808A. Miss Dottie.
Yes, sir. Chair Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Member Heather Anderson,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney, aye.
The resolution is approved. We may move forward.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dustin.
all.
Thanks so
Have a great
much,
night.
man.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Dustin.
thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. All right.
Sure.
Very good. We are now into item number 9 of our 10-item agenda, and that's board comments. Any comments from the board?
Oh,
No? Yes, ma'am.
yes, I just want to thank Jake for all his hard work. Thank you, Jake.
Indeed.
Thank you. I appreciate
Indeed.
that.
No, man. Yeah, and we're overdue, so I'll reach out. Very good. And welcome aboard, Heather. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Heather and I had a brief conversation earlier. She didn't have the background of all of this, so we chatted for a few minutes, and I actually sounded half intelligent there. So it's nice to know what I'm talking about.
Glad her first rodeo was not the 5-hour one.
Right.
It was the 3-hour one.
It was a 3-hour.
It wasn't the 5-hour one.
Well, she actually sat through the 5-hour
She
one to
did.
get
She
voted
did.
on the
To get
board.
voted on.
Oh, that's right.
We should have moved that up in the
Well, never.
deal, but it's all right.
Disregard my comment. Welcome aboard.
Any other comments, gang? Well, then we will open it for public comment, which we lost our public. Jen Hathaway. Jen Hathaway's gone. We have Lisa still in the attendees section. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting at 8:43. Our next meeting is November 12th at 5:30. And it'll be dark when we start because daylight saving will be done. So it'll be dark. All right, everybody. Thank you so very much for your time, your attention, and your dedication. It is an honor to serve with you all. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you all. Good to see you all.
Good night all.
Thanks all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.